Hello and welcome to day 10 of the T20 World Cup. And we are at a very interesting time because the Super 8 slots have almost been decided, except for that one slot where we're waiting. Okay, is Pakistan going to make it or is USA going to make it? But for all practical purposes, I'm going to assume Pakistan's going to make it. But there is an interesting game that is there tomorrow at 3 p.m. At the SSC or the Sinhalese Sports Club, where Pakistan take on Namibia. Who am I supporting? I'm just happy to see any kind of cricket. The part of me that's missed traveling to Colombo last weekend. So if there's an opportunity to travel to Colombo for the India-Pakistan semi-final, that should be fun. But it also increases costs of traveling to go to Colombo, then going to Ahmedabad. But let's see how that pans out. For now, the Namibia Pakistan game is something that I'm going to look forward to. But so far, what's happened in this whole weekend of 5 days? I call it an extended weekend of sorts, but what's happened is Australia has now moved out of the World Cup. Now, if you were to look at Australia as a T20 side, they've not really been a side that sets the T20 World Cup alight. Like if you look at their early years, right? But 2007, Zimbabwe again did beat them, but Australia still managed to enter the semi-finals where they lost to India. 2009 was where they did not make it past the group stage, but in 2012 they made it to the Super 8 stage. They were, I think, along with India, uh, Pakistan, and South Africa, and they managed to go to the semi-final. 2000 uh, uh, 14 and 16 Australia were knocked out at the group stages. But yes, I think the only World Cup that they won was in 2021, where they had all their prime players. But more than that, I think the biggest advantage Australia had was winning tosses, where the due conditions kind of helped teams that won the toss, because once teams won the toss, they batted first. And I think the only exception in that whole T20 World Cup was, I think, England deciding to, bat first, and Sri Lanka not being able to chase that down. That was a very, very strange World Cup, but nevertheless, you can't take it away from Australia. But Australia now are well and truly out of the World Cup. Yesterday was just like, okay, Australia had lost to Sri Lanka, but today with the game between uh, Ireland and Zimbabwe not happening, Zimbabwe got an extra point, and Australia are out of the World Cup. And I think the Australian media right now is extremely, extremely hurt that they feel that there were signs. Why did the Aussie selectors not take this into account? Because when I look at some of the games that Australia played in that lead up, it's not like they're a bad side, but they don't have two, three combinations that fit in very well. So if you look at their batting, Australia were going to play in Sri Lanka for a small part, and then they were going to play in India with the Super 8 games. But with the way the team has to be selected, essentially, is for Sri Lanka, you probably needed openers, which they have very good openers, Mitchell Marsh and Travis Head, who are, you need your blockbuster openers who can give you your 6 over 70 kind of starts. And then you need a middle overs anchor for spin, such that even if you lose your openers early, there is somebody who's able to steady the ship. Like it would have really helped if they had somebody like that for the game against Zimbabwe on Friday. Unfortunately, they didn't. Matt Renshaw, in fact, did play a good knock, 63 or 45 balls. But yeah, the selection essentially needed that. And then you needed finishers or hitters. And while Australia tested themselves in the West Indies, where they played 5 games, they won 5-0. They then played against South Africa in Darwin and North Australia. Then they came, I think they uh, also played against New Zealand in New Zealand, and they won those games. The thing is, as much as you play T20 cricket in these places, is it the same question paper as what's going to come in Sri Lanka or in India? Not quite. I think Sri Lanka was probably the part that they needed to really get it right, because India, the Australian team is still used to playing when they come for the IPL, and some of their current bowlers, for example, Nathan Ellis, is somebody who's been been playing for sides in the last couple of editions of the IPL. But Sri Lanka was going to be that slightly unknown quantity, and Australia did not have the right combinations. Like I sometimes think, if Steve Smith was actually selected much earlier in the squad as opposed to being flown out, would it have helped? They did collapse against Zimbabwe with the fast bowling in the first power play. They were 29 for 4 in the seventh over. Could that situation have been avoided and Australia could have been closer to at least, making sure that they could do something with the game? Apart from that, I think some of the selections that Australia have had in their batting, somebody like Glenn Maxwell, he is a very pale shadow of who he used to be. This is probably they thought, okay, his last opportunity, he should sign off on a high. But unfortunately, I don't think Glenn Maxwell is anywhere near the person who was batting the 2023 World Cup. And also some of their other batters like someone like Tim David, he's actually done well at number 4 in the earlier T20Is, but all of their top 7, top 8 batters struggled in Pakistan, and I think that was uh, maybe it was too late for them to make any kind of changes because the squad was just transitioning from Pakistan to Colombo in about a couple of days. But their squad was struggling. They were just playing across the line against spin, and they were really not settling in. And I think this was very, very clear indications that they did not have. Matt Renshaw did play that series. There were very clear indications that Australia did not have the batting, especially on tricky turning surfaces where spinners have a role to play. And Sri Lanka was going to be their test. I think knowing fully well Australia went in, they did not ask for reinforcements at the last moment. They didn't select a side which would be good to play on the subcontinental conditions in Sri Lanka. India, let's assume these are not day games; these are day-night games, and as a result, sometimes you can get away with dew. But that's not the case. Unfortunately, Australia find themselves out. But it's not just the batting that kind of was a disappointment. Batting, in fact, equally bore the brunt. The top order collapsed versus Zimbabwe, whereas the middle and lower order really, you know, uh, muffed up in the game against Sri Lanka. 160 for 4 in 16 overs. Australia was still having a good game. And hi for the four folks who are on the live telecast. So, in case you have any questions, please do put it on YouTube. The questions are going to come here. For the ones who are watching on Twitter, please do ping on Twitter as a reply. I'm happy to take questions. Let's have a social conversation here. And yeah, looking forward to having conversations with this whole thing socially. So I think yeah, Australia 160 for 4 in the 16th over. Australia really messed it up. They did 21 for 6 in the next 24 balls, and that, you can't do that in a T20 game, especially when the side's chasing is doing it under due. So of course Sri Lanka. In fact, if you look at Sri Lanka, when the second wicket was lost, Sri Lanka required 77 in 46 balls. That's close to 10 and over. And at that point, if Australia just had that extra 10-15 run cushion, that would have been enough for them to put pressure because it's one thing chasing 77 or 46 balls, it's one thing chasing 92 or 46 balls. Because at with 77 or 46 and you have wickets in hand, they just milked Cooper Connolly and Adam Zampa. And talking about Cooper Connolly, I've seen Cooper Connolly play at the BBL on December 23rd, 2024, when I had gone for the Boxing Day Test match. I also ended up going for a game. He hit a six at the that hit the roof. So it's somebody who's got a lot of good ability. But Cooper Connolly, is he going to be your restrictive bowler, like let's say an Ashton Agar, or is Cooper Connolly going to go bat? He's not had a great run of form leading to the T20 World Cup. Totally scored some 20-25 runs, average is 5. So while he might be a good player who's earmarked for the future, I think Australia backing him for these important games in Sri Lanka was probably a tactical mistake. They could have played Matt Renshaw for Cooper Connolly and not used his overs. I mean, I'm sure the Australia had enough all-rounders to get that mix of 20 overs in, and it's not like Cooper Connolly's overs were really helping Australia in the games against Ireland or was it Zimbabwe or was it Sri Lanka. So yeah, I think their batting was a complete miss. And someone like Tim David, who's played very well at number 4, he's scored a 74 against India, scored 100 against the West Indies. But sometimes on these turning tracks where there's a lot of turn right up, he's looked a little out of sorts. But I still like his like the thought process of playing Tim David at number 4. Maybe on truer surfaces that really matters, and that that whole argument of Tim David at number 4 has some credence there. But outside of that, I think These were some of the blunders that Australia made, and it's just amplified over the two games that Australia have lost. Unfortunate, but that's how it is. That's how the cookie crumbles. It's exactly how India felt in the 2007 50 over World Cup, where we had two bad games, also against Sri Lanka and one against Bangladesh. And I think, yes, that was a generational change. It necessitated a generational change, and I'm sure Australia too will now look to see, okay, what's that T20 side going to look like. And I think they've somehow always picked those test specialists that have worked well for them, and then tried to use them in T20s. And I say test specialists because somebody like Josh Hazelwood, man, what a bowler. Somebody like, he while he bowls absolutely well in conditions in Australia where there's seam movement that is there, I think on subcontinental tracks, Josh Hazelwood, he bowled very well in 2021 when they won that World Cup, and their whole trio of Stark, Pat Cummins, and Josh Hazelwood, that's like a golden trio. But in that trio, I still think Josh Hazelwood is the leader of the pack. Mitchell Stark was actually hit. If you look at the 2024 World Cup, Rohit Sharma targeted him basis the wind conditions. So out of the three, I think it's Josh Hazelwood. Still, if he was there, him and Adam Zampa could have put the choke on, because you are having 8 overs of very tough bowling that teams have to attack, and as a result, they lose wickets. Here, there was no pressure that was being put by Xavier Bartlett or Nathan Ellis, or in fact, the wickets came to Marcus Stoinis. He's picked 3 of those 4 wickets that came. Cam Green picked the other one in the games against Zimbabwe and Sri Lanka. So that way, I think Australia's fast bowlers have not come to the party, not been able to put pressure, not been able to take wickets, putting immense pressure on somebody like Adam Zampa, who's apart from that 4 wicket haul versus Ireland, he did not manage to pick any wickets in the games against Sri Lanka and Zimbabwe, and Australia really looked completely out of sorts. While they had, I think, the skeleton of a good side, which is like 7 good players, but unfortunately, some of them not in form, 3, 4 really out of form players, and those really mess with the combination, because you always have this generational respect for Australia, which is what even I had tweeted yesterday, and a lot of people on Twitter got behind me saying, "You idiot! You thought Australia could win?" But I actually thought Australia would win because 8 overs, 97 for no loss. All they had to do was just close the game, get 200, but that did not happen. Amazing innings from Pathum Nissanka, and I just happened to check some stats on Pathum Nissanka. Uh, if you go to my Twitter, which is Karthik_Kannan, you will see some very interesting stats that I put up on Pathum Nissanka, which shows the percentage failure rates. If I were to plot his innings, I just went to Cricinfo, looked at all of his innings since 2024, which is post the 2024 World Cup, July 2024, and also the time Sanath Jayasuriya became the coach for Sri Lanka, the interim coach, and then stayed on as the coach. I think he's given him a lot of freedom, and the way Pathum Nissanka has played yesterday, the percentage of innings which are failures, which is maybe less than 10, he is in fact among the lower quartile of people, of other openers, contemporary openers in this T20I format, um, who have played. Somebody like Sanju Samson fails a lot more. Whereas somebody like Pathum Nissanka doesn't fail as often. 30% of his innings is where Pathum Nissanka fails. 50% of his innings, Pathum Nissanka crosses 25, which is in fact a top tier performance. Somebody like Travis Head has marginally higher numbers, but he's played far lesser T20Is. So of people who've played at least 10 games, Pathum Nissanka is at the top there. So I think that's the quality that we've seen. Somebody like Pathum Nissanka, he's one of those generational players that come out. And in fact, there was Vinay Kashyap, one of my friends on Twitter, who actually reminded me that I had told him during the 2021 Test match or 2022 Test match when Sri Lanka had come to India for the day-night test. I was looking at Pathum Nissanka bat, and I kind of felt that Pathum Nissanka was going to be Mahela and Charit Asalanka was going to be their Sangha, and this is going to be the next generation. So, but yes, I think that everybody enjoyed that innings. It was played, and I love some of the shots that he hit. The shot that he hit, especially, changing the handle of the bat and then trying to get that to deep fine leg. Because usually, what happens is in a scoop, the pace is completely you're using the pace of the ball to scoop. But in the shot that he did, he actually timed it. My friend, in fact, remarked the sound of the ball hitting the bat was so nice to hear. It wasn't the usual scoop. So that's what made it very different. And outside of that, I think he had entered a zone where whatever the Australian bowlers bowled at him, he was able to hit it for boundaries, especially at 20 runs, 20 balls. At that stage, I was thinking, okay, could Sri Lanka collapse here potentially? Because Pathum Nissanka is nearing 100. None of that happened. Loved the way Sri Lanka finished the game and all the crowd reaction every time they took a wicket or hit the boundary. I'm sure the Sri Lankan crowd was happy. And even if you were on this channel yesterday, we had a Sri Lankan commentator uh, who joined us yesterday, and Indusan. And Indusan did speak about how happy Sri Lanka was to watch the T20 World Cup unfold and have opportunities for tourism and commerce to happen. So that way, I think it was a great knock by Pathum Nissanka. And now, while Australia are find themselves out of the World Cup, what is it that is there to look forward to? And in the Super Eights, like first block is of course is Pakistan coming there. Next up, I think I'm curious to see how Zimbabwe are going to roll. I've personally gone and booked two Super 8 games of Zimbabwe. I'm going for the India Zimbabwe game. It's no more the India Australia game. Right on the 26th at Chepauk. I'll also be going for the Zimbabwe West Indies game on next Monday in Wankhede. It's Mumbai is closer to Ahmedabad. I'll be going on Sunday for the India South Africa game. So look forward to a largely sleep deprived week. And yeah, this is where the Super February 21st is where the Super 8s start at the 7 p.m. game. And it's a good day to start because I also turned 43 on that day. So, but yes, given all that, looking forward to an exciting week ahead. And thanks for all of you, the 15 odd people who've been watching the live stream. Thanks everyone for giving your time and watching the live stream. I'll be back same time tomorrow. Till then, see you. Tara.